All right, hi everybody. Today I'm just going to be talking a little bit about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So after reading the book, just to answer kind of this general question of does this work of fiction speak to me? And I think, yeah, it does for me. And I think a big part of that has to do with my Christian faith. And I really drew a lot of great connections from the allegorical connections that can be made to, the Christian teachings that are in the book. So, a lot of those resonated with me, and I really enjoyed reading the book in general. And I really kind of found deeper meaning in a lot of these Christian allegorical connections. All right, just to kind of expand on some of those connections that I did find very interesting. I think there's this overarching connection of how the story in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe really just in general is an allegorical, connection and representation of many of the stories and the lessons that are found in the Bible. So I think the most apparent one is, this direct allegory from Aslan to Jesus. And, I think throughout the narrative, Aslan embodies many of these Christ-like qualities, such as, I think most importantly here, love, mercy, and especially self-sacrifice. So I think kind of theologically, it was pretty cool how I thought his role aligned with this central Christian belief that Jesus is this, sacrificial savior of humanity, and how, you can think of humanity being Edmund, and, when he kind of early on betrays his family and aligns himself with the White Witch, he, takes on this connection where he becomes humanity, that has sinned and fallen into sin. And through the self sacrifice and graciousness of Aslan, he redeems him and he saves him. And I think there's this lesson of redemption and forgiveness that can be, seen in here. Definitely how in this unconditional love and grace that Aslan demonstrates despite as Edmund's betrayal, it really just uh, relates to this Christian theology and how grace is, not something that needs to be earned necessarily, but is, freely given from God. And even those that, turned away from Him are, worthy of His redemption and His love. And I think that's something that, just Christians in general, and especially Christian kids, I think would find very important, as this moral lesson. And a little bit about the spiritual warfare aspect that I thought this was pretty interesting. I think it's quite clear how the White Witch, with her powers, to deceive and manipulate, quite directly represent this nature of evil and sin. So again, early on when she offers and tempts Edmund with these false promises, much like Satan tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden, or even the tempting of Jesus in the wilderness. I think just in general, this idea in Christian theology that evil often appears as something attractive or seemingly fulfilling for the soul, but in reality it's quite the opposite and leads to destruction and the separation from God. And I think you could kind of make the connection of the witch's endless winter symbolizing this, spiritual death and barrenness, I suppose, that sin brings into the world, and how Aslan and his return is the opposite of that. And just to touch on a little bit of this faith and trust aspect, I think these are kids that make their way into Narnia. I think that's a important distinction, and they almost have this childlike faith in God, in their case, Aslan, um, and how they're open to wonder and trust on this adventure with Aslan, and it really highlights their purity and simplicity, really, of trusting God and His goodness, and obviously Aslan, in their case, not God, but making that allegorical connection there. Um, they're making these decisions by placing their faith in Aslan, and I would think it just this journey of faith in general, how they grow in their faith, is really representative of the Christian experience, sorry, of spiritual growth and just learning to trust God's plan even when we may not understand it fully. So I think it was quite cool, seeing especially Peter. I thought was quite cool how he went from this young boy really to a king, and he did that through placing his faith in Aslan. And as he saw these miracles and these demonstrations from Aslan, I think his faith only grew, and I think that led him to be the king that he is. Right. To quickly kind of touch on this real world perspective aspect, and I think Lewis's timing in writing, just the Narnia series was very significant because, it's coming in the aftermath of two world wars and especially this era of growing secularism. So I think The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe really kind of offers this hopeful vision and just reminder that's rooted in Christian truth and Christian faith, especially for these kids and these children growing up in especially uncertain times. This story serves as this reminder of God's presence in our lives, and you know our constant battle against evil, and this assurance that Aslan, or God's will and his love, will ultimately conquer all darkness. And I think the Christian message is at the heart of Narnia, in my opinion. And it doesn't just comfort me personally. It strengthens my resolve to live out my faith more deeply. And I think that really resonates with a lot of people, not just me. And I think it had a lot of real world meaning. Just the moral lessons found in the book. I think it really becomes a tool that encourages people to remain steadfast in their own walks with Christ and faith. And I think it just serves as a good reminder. And I think it had a lot of very quite cool real world impacts. So just to quite quickly touch on how the allegorical connections impacted my enjoyment, I think I've been quite clear on I think it really elevated my experience reading the book. Though I do want to remark that the first time I did read this, I was a kid, and I quite honestly did not get really any of the allegorical connections to the Christian faith. But I really enjoyed the book, just the fantasy aspect of the book, and I think not looking at it through the lens of this allegorical Christian connection, I think it has a lot of good moral lessons that can be found in the book. And just kind of that secular viewpoint, I think it's a great book in general, and I really did enjoy reading the book. But again, just for me personally, I think making a lot of these allegorical connections that were rooted in my faith, they really did help me enjoy the book a little bit more. So it really just added a couple more layers of meaning that really resonated with me and my faith and my journey. And I think it's for me, I really enjoyed reading about Aslan in particular, because he really represents these qualities that we associate with Christ, and they're not just these abstract ideas. We get to see them really quite beautifully woven into the story, and it's quite uplifting and affirming in general. So I didn't really find it very distracting from the meaning of the film, or sorry, the novel.